Muchachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. Fun time had by all. I'm Petey Rave, and I could totally stop playing Balatro anytime I want. I swear. And here with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my gang. We've got David.
Buenos tacos, muchachos. Astrobot is heaven.
Oh yeah. And Drew.
I may or may not be getting a PlayStation 5 for Christmas from what somebody has been asking me about in this household. So
Get Astrobot.
may be in my future.
Yes, some Astrobot. I've watched an entire playthrough of Astrobot, and I still want to play Astrobot.
Also, the
I've
Sevendust
watched
Temple, very good.
Several. Yes, I have. I just finished a case.
Nice.
They're very good.
All right.
That's the sugar-free. Memuna, my sister, sugar-free version.
Exactly.
Mine's not, because sucralose makes my tummy upset.
Yeah.
So.
But speaking of no, I'm not speaking of making your tummy upset. Speaking of,
Well, I will say my A1C came back good, so I'm not diabetic anymore.
That's good. Let's get into some music. Let's get into the sweet stuff of the episode. We're gonna the provider of the music, the provider of the album that we're discussing this week is David. David, what have you got in store for us?
Petey, we're going to continue along. I felt like with the last album we had on the podcast, I felt like we should continue in the new metal vein. And I said on the last episode that Sevendust, along with Disturbed, are the two bands that I always hold up and say, hey, I don't hate new metal. I don't think new metal sucks. There's at least two good new metal bands that I really, really enjoy. Lots of great riffs, big, chunky metal guitars, and LJ Witherspoon's fantastic voice. I'm talking about Sevendust. And this is their album, Truth Killer.
Truth Killer. Drew, what was your thought process? What were your expectations coming into this album?
I didn't really have any, mostly because, like, I feel like Sevendust was coming around when I was getting out of, like, new metal and metal in general. So they were one of those bands where I was like, oh, it's the thing I don't really listen to anymore because I was getting into, like, punk rock and ska and that side of alternative music. So I was interested to sort of hear what this band was about. I knew if Deej liked them, they probably had some good musicianship at the very least. So that was exciting.
Sevendust was always a band that was like around, and the name was always around in all of our spaces. And I'm certain, like, I've listened to a bunch of their tracks. They were never the band that I was like super like balls deep into, but they were a band that I definitely was aware of, and I've probably listened to quite a few of the things, and it was gonna be fun to dive back in, especially like something newer from them. I'm looking forward to that. David, how would you describe this album musically?
I would describe this album musically as exactly the kind of thing you would want from a band like this in the modern day. It is unquestionably very much like what you heard from Sevendust in the 90s and early 2000s. Very heavy tones, lots of really groovy metal riffs, but not like Pantera groovy, if you know what I mean. But good crunchy metal, lots of great riffs, multi-layered vocals. LJ, Clint Lowry, and their guitarist all doing vocals within one another, and their drummer Morgan Rose. And that was one of the things about Sevendust that really stood out for me with them as a band, is that they weren't really technical like Mudvayne, but they had the uniqueness of having different vocalists in the band and putting them all together. And that worked really well, especially with Lejean, LJ, on top of it as the lead vocalist. And for me, they weren't always like the band that I was most invested in, but in this genre, they are definitely a band that I would always check in on. I know that I have listened in full to now at least 3 of their albums. Uh, as I moved from metal and moved into more of the progressive side of things, I didn't engage with them as much, but I always kept an eye on things that members of the band were doing, what LJ was doing, what Morgan Rose was doing. And when I heard this album, it was a good mix of exactly what you want from Sevendust, while you also hear them trying new things. And I would say the new things that they try, for the most part, they work. And as always, the band is lifted by LJ's voice.
Mm-hmm. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, one, David said a lot. The voice is absolutely killer. Um, with metal in general, I always tend to harp on like vocals. There are very specific types of vocals I like when I listen to metal, and this hits a lot of those tones that I like. It's sort of a lower register growl, but it still has power and it still has tone, which I really think is great. And the sustain on the vocals that he can achieve is really, really great. The guitar work also was brilliant, I think, from start to finish. The like sort of the only thing I can think to describe it is thickness. The thickness within the guitar tone itself, I think, was really, really cool. It was something where you got like a lot of body to all of it. And also reading, I did not know this going into this, obviously, but hearing that some of the more uh, electronic-y bits of the music were actually sort of newer additions, new things they were sort of experimenting with this record. And I think it actually is really, really cool. An album I thought about bringing on, but am going to pivot a little bit due to the times. Spoiler alert. The album I was going to bring on was Static X. And one of the reasons I like Static X a lot is because of those like more electronic-y, techno-y sort of sensibility to certain things. And hearing that some of this was put in sort of as an experiment and stuff like that, I think is really, really cool. The one thing, if I would nitpick, is that the tone, when I'm talking about those thick guitars and stuff like that, that tonal center doesn't shift a whole lot. I would like to maybe some of the slower sections do like a little bit more grandiose, like power metal stuff, maybe just to give it a little bit of a tonal shift. But that's if I'm nitpicking. I sometimes can sound like a broken record when it comes to metal, because my favorite type of metal is the stuff that takes me back to going to the Robin Hood in Kent, Ohio, and listening to like death metal and goth metal and new metal bands and stuff like that when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old. And this, more than a lot of other ones, puts me right into being in that plain black hoodie with the hood up, just like arms in it, my hoodie, just at the edge of the mosh pit, just like sitting there listening to the music and stuff like that. So I can dig it.
Um, with your comments, would you say you're down with the thickness?
Have you seen pictures of my fiance?
See, it's not the wordplay itself. It's just that exact line was miles away.
Yes. Yes. Um, if I were to describe this on music, I would say a lot of the similar things. This is very like very, very tightly performed, very, very good quality, like new metal. It is what you would expect when you're thinking the more metal end of the spectrum of new metal. Um still the groove, still the chunk, still the kind of like the thickness, as as Drew would say. uh Still, but it's not just, this isn't just drop tuning and chunky triplets. This is also some really nice musicianship and some nice like riffs and some nice vocals, and the vocals are a big star here. Lejean is an amazing vocalist, and distinct in the scene, and is he conveys a lot of really like the feel and the sounds of what is the intended purpose of the songs really well. um and and brings it into the whole package, like, um but ultimately this is very much is a it's a new metal album. Even the album art is like quintessential metal album art. Like,
It is timelessly new metal.
exactly. Like you have, and it's just it is, but it is probably it's probably something I've heard from Giant Bomb, or at least them and other places. Just like the new metal. Um, it's a good one of those. It's a really good one of those.
It's one of the good ones, Petey. Is that what you're saying?
It's no, I no.
Man,
I wanted to quote.
really? And it has to be Sevendust. You have to say that, huh?
Yeah, you see, you can set me up too, and I'll knock it out of the park.
Damn, I'm too. I could say I'm Latino, but I'm too pale to. I could say I'm Latino, but look at me. I'm just a
But
different
you
kind
are-
of colonizer
You
descendant.
are Latino,
Yeah.
Petey. Own
Uh,
that.
Yes. Um, that being said, it is really tight, really well performed. It is new metal at its core, but it is timelessly new metal. Let's get down to the key tracks. David, what would be some of the key tracks for you coming into this album?
The title track had a big chorus that, again, Lejean just effortlessly sings on and does a great ad lib in the last chorus, and the groove in the song is really fantastic. I loved "Won't Stop the Bleeding" because it had a great build up and then a great like explosive chorus, and I thought that was really really fun. Uh, it's been a while since I've really sat down with the lyrics of a Sevendust album because I've always really liked their lyrics, but Leave Hell Behind was one of them. And I just want to kind of say that throughout this album, I thought the lyrics were really interesting, and Leave Hell Behind was one of them. Also, Superficial Drug. I think that this one actually might have drifted over into the lesser side, the less heavier side of new metal on Superficial Drug. And I think Fence, the final track, I think was good enough to be a single. I think that could have been a blow up track.
Mhm.
Like if Fence had come out in like 2001, it would have been all over the place.
Yeah. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, beginning with "I Might Let the Devil Win." The weird thing was, I would say that usually what I want in a first track is to really show me everything. This one doesn't.
I was waiting on this.
Yeah, it doesn't It's not as fast as most of the rest of the record. It's a little bit slower, takes its time. Um, it still has that thickness of guitar, so you do get the tonal center that you're going for. The vocal tone, the effects that are on some of the vocals with the layering and the production work there is amazing. And it has this like really cool, brooding, mysterious, plotting nature to it that sort of begets the, like David was saying, the subject matter and the lyrics, which I think that playing off of each other is really good. It it doesn't do the first track thing that it usually does, that I usually want out of a first track, but it still does some really cool stuff. So I had to mention it, of course. Um, no revolution. Listen, if you listen along with the records and you didn't listen to this one with headphones, go back and do that, because the choppy effect that goes on in the verses is really cool in headphones. And then Fence, like, I'll also mention Fence because holy shit, that song was great. If this was an early aughts like new metal song back in the day, heyday of new metal, when Mudvayne and Mushroomhead and Slipknot and all those motherfuckers were out there, like, Fence, I think, would have been all over the radio. I think Fence would have been everywhere. It would have hit really, really hard. The higher register, like cleaner vocals, the growls, the anger, the grit, the chugs through the guitar, it all just worked really, really well.
Yeah. The so many great tracks. Truth Killer for the title track adds, it brings in a really great heaviness as a great follow-up to the opening track. Um Everything is obviously the is a very obvious candidate for a single, and I think showcases what's going on in this album, particularly with the style and the sound really well, and I think it's a really great choice for a single. If you go into like No Revolution, then No Revolution I feel like really kind of revs up the chugga chugga of this album. Like and I think really really great ways, it's just like
What about the choo choo?
in like the drumming, the bass drums, and like the guitars, and the kind of the crunch, and the beautiful like new metal feel of it is really fantastic. I really like a little bit of like the electronic feel of like Holy Water, and some like touches that are really nice. And like yeah, Leave the Hell Behind from a lyrical standpoint, from a vocal standpoint, is really nice. And yet Fence, uh it makes sense that that one was is a lead single. It was a lead single because it is, you know, that has been said, like that classic Seven Dust. But also apparently, and I haven't seen the music video, apparently it has a claymation music video, so if you were
Yes, it does.
so
Oh man, now I'm gonna
It's
have to go
good.
back and watch that.
bring
It's
it back
good.
to the bring it back
It's
to the,
good. I'll put it in the
so,
Discord.
yeah. But yeah, really cool, really really great tracks that, uh, then those are kind of like a really like great highlights on the album. Um, let's bring it back around the horn and talk about some conclusive thoughts. Drew, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album as a whole?
While this very much did take me back to, like I said, my 12, 13, 14-year old like sort of days, it was doing a lot of new interesting stuff. It was doing some really, really cool, interesting things. And I think that not only is that really commendable, but I feel like it's what you want a band like this to do, right? You If you still are a fan of a band like this, you're a fan of them because you became a fan and you kind of want a little bit of like the same but newer, and you want them to like stretch it a little bit. You want to move those tones. I want to go back and like maybe listen to another Sevendust record because it's like, okay, well, if this is what they're doing and then they're adding the other stuff, what happens when you take it away? How do they work with certain soundscapes and stuff like that? But overall, I think it works really, really well.
Mhm. Um, I think this is a really great iteration, really great showcase of what Seven Dust has done and is doing. It it doesn't vary as much as like some might want it to, but it does everything really tightly. It does everything really well. It's that um it's quintessential new metal, not news metal, new metal. Uh those now suddenly had a thought of like Huey Lewis and the
Bring it
news.
back.
Huey
Bring
Lewis
it
and the
back.
Huey Lewis and news slash metal mashups. Throw that out there. New metal, quintessential new metal, and really classic sound. And Some Dust is a great band to deliver it. Because they're not lame, and they're really tight, really great musicians. And it just ends up really being a fun, tight throwback of an album that still feels, you know, still feels nice, and just still works, still hits good. Um, Last but not least, David, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
PD, in the pre-show, I had mentioned that my A1C is in a good place. I had a couple of labs done. Got my blood drawn a couple of times just to check for everything. Blood sugar is good. Everything else is pretty much okay.
Watch
But
your potassium.
my my,
I
pota-
found out.
my potassium they did say it was higher than average, but okay.
Nice.
But the thing that they did say I was deficient in was Chugga Chugga. I
God
realized
damn it.
listening to this, I really missed this kind of sound in metal. Just very forward and really percussive. And I just missed that big, heavy sound. And I needed some Chugga Chugga in my diet. And Sevendust was just what I needed, like a ice cold bottle of Dr. Pepper. Ding. Uh, LJ's voice is as good as ever. Clint and Morgan as well. And they play as tight as ever. They are as creative as ever. And it feels like, in the best way possible, Sevendust has not lost a step.
Mhm. Yeah, that those are our thoughts on Seven Dust's Truth Killer. Now we get to the main event of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for, our haiku reviews, where we sum it all up with the 575. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haikumero numero uno. Drew, what is your haiku?
There it is. The crunch and squeal gets you a lot of fun depth. Love the production.
Mm-hmm. And now my haiku. 5 skilled musicians play some high level new metal, not just chugga chugs. And last but not least, David, what is your haiku?
Fun, heavy guitars. Consistent, if not samey. They've still got the sauce.
Mm-hmm. And those are our thoughts on Seven Dust's Truth Killer. You can, of course, find it on our Spotify playlists and our YouTube playlists. Play Record Burgers, a home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence on those playlists. Will be next week's record as well. Well, next week. We hope next week. We'll see if life allows us. Uh, but if we have any say about it, it'll be next week. And it'll be provided by Drew. Drew, what is your album? What do you got for us?
Well, like I was saying, I think pre-show, I might have mentioned it a little bit, but after I was sort of getting out of metal, I wanted to get into something that wasn't influenced by my sister being into it. So I started getting into a lot of punk rock music through the years. And one of those bands is a band I think that, given the current climate of the world, might not be a bad one to go back to for certain reasons. This album was released after the band broke up and the lead singer had committed suicide via drugs, which is kind of sad, but it's a compilation of their only studio works with him. Reagan the Youth is the band. A collection of pop classics is the album.
And you could, of course, check it out on our Spotify playlist, like I said, and our YouTube playlist. And, of course, you can find us all over the internet. Rebelli.net, youtube.com/@RebelliTV, twitch.tv/RebelliTV to watch us live. You can find us everywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find our feed on our website, so you can put it manually yourself wherever you want. Like, share, subscribe to all the things, comment, find us everywhere. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.
Fighting.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.